Kailangan natin maintindihan, even though this variant is still not of concern but still under investigation based on WHO's classification, kailangan mag-iingat na tayo. Everybody is seeing what's happening in India right now. The rate of transmission is very, very high. So our country would like to restrict our borders first. Mag-iingat tayo kasi nakikita na natin yung nangyayari sa kanila at ayaw na natin na magkaroon pa ng enabler ang ibang variants na pumasok dito sa ating bansa.
That was Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere explaining the need to bar entry of travelers coming from India. The South Asian nation is facing a second wave of infections with a variant under investigation already detected.
India just tallied its deadliest day on record with 3,300 fatalities. Total fatalities in India now breach 200,000. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. We begin with India, where a new wave of infections has sent the country into a deep crisis.
The Philippines has already closed its borders for anyone coming from the South Asian nation. But what does this mean for Filipinos living in India? Mobile journalist Pam Castro has the big story.
People struggling to survive. Plenty desperate to find free oxygen and medical help. India is now overwhelmed as COVID-19 cases explode to new levels. With nearly 18 million infections, around 2,000 Filipinos live in the country, including Tal. The Kalinga native lives in Panchkula, 260 kilometers away from New Delhi, the capital heavily struck by the pandemic. Kamusta po kayo dyan?
Na-surprise na it suddenly escalated to this number. Yung mga ICU, oxygen-abled hospitals, medyo wala na talagang available spaces for the COVID patients. Even oxygens now are running out of stock and people are really scrambling to source out kung saan sila kukuha ng ventilator.
According to Philippine Ambassador to India Ramon Bagatsing, 2 OFWs have died in India due to COVID-19. With 20 also testing positive.
Dalawa sa ating mga OFW, as I said, these are managerial level people that have passed away. Tutulungan ng ating mga kababayan dito.
Philippines will ban the entry of travelers from India as well as those with recent travel history to the country from April 29 to May 14. The move also prevents the entry of a possible new variant under investigation in India.
Kailangan natin maintindihan, even though this variant is still not of concern but still under investigation based on WHO's classification, kailangan mag-iingat na tayo. Kasi nakikita na natin yung nangyayari sa kanila at ayaw na natin na magkaroon pa ng enabler ang ibang variants na pumasok dito sa ating bansa para makapag-cause pa ng further transmission ng sakit.
The Health Department advises Pinoys in India to keep following minimum public health standards.
We have said that over and over again. Whatever type of variants there are, we comply with the minimum health standards.
We try to extend.
For the likes of Tal, coming back to the country may not be an option anytime soon. While the case in India is dire, staying home will always be her best bet.
With the crisis in India becoming more grim and devastating, how are Filipinos in the country doing? Joining us tonight to share her observations, Victoria Singh, President of Kababayan sa New Delhi. Ma'am Victoria.
Yes. Good evening po.
Good evening po. Kamusta nga po ba ang mga kababayan sa Delhi?
Sa Delhi po, okay naman po kami. Na-keep in touch po kami sa mobile, ganon. Pero lahat po kami okay. Meron naman pong na COVID sila, mga 20, mga ganyan po. Pero na-recover po sila. Okay po sila kasi naagapan nila.
Pero nakikita po kasi namin dito yung mga eksena sa balita. Talaga nakakatakot. Pagka naririnig din namin yung mga numero dyan sa India, nakakagulantang. Ano po ibig sabihin nun dyan sa mga lockdown? Nakakalabas ba kayo ng bahay? Paano po ang buhay-buhay ngayon?
Hindi po sir, ang talagang lockdown po, nasa bahay lang po kami. Hindi kami pwedeng lumabas kung emergency lang po. Yung po. Tapos kung halimbawa talagang emergency, kailangan may ipas ka pa.
Mm. So iba pa po ba ang sitwasyon ngayon doon sa mga naunang lockdown?
Ah, Bahot difference po, too much difference. Before that 2020, it's okay, but now it's too harder and riskier, this COVID second.
Natatakot po ba kayo?
Takot ka po dahil po nag-iisa lang po ako dito sa bahay, lahat po, kaya hindi po ako lumalabas. Marami po talaga natatakot kasi po kahit na po nasa bahay, nagkakasakit din nakakaroon din ng COVID Tapos we cannot help each other because we cannot go out, even that one Filipino passed away because of that.
Samantala po, paano po yan? Pinag-uusapan ngayon is ipatigil muna ang travel between India and the Philippines. Paano po ang mga kababayan natin dyan? Marami po bang maapektuhan doon?
Marami din po, lalo na po yung mga liver transplant po. Kaya lang po, dahil nadidelay nga po itong flight, palagi silang ngayon talagang stop po Kaya po hindi sila muna uuwi, dito na lang po muna sila. Pero po sila, nasa bahay lang po sila, hindi rin sila lumalabas. Nakokontak po namin, kanilang po kausap po sila. Sabi ko mag-ingat kayo dahil may mga bata kayong kasama. Okay naman daw po sila. Nung nagkaano sila na positive sila, nag-isolate po sila, tapos may medicine sila, pinadalan namin ng mga pagkain. Ngayon po, naka-recover na po sila.
Okay. Ma'am Victoria, maraming salamat po. Ingat po kayo dyan. That was Victoria Singh, kababayan
Sir, thank you
natin
very
sa
much po.
New Delhi. India sees yet another tragic milestone as its COVID-19 death toll has surpassed the 200,000 mark. Tonight's big number is 201,187. That's the total number of lives claimed by COVID-19 in India. New fatalities being reported in India have reached almost 3,300. That marks the country's deadliest day in its fight against COVID-19. India also recorded the largest number of single-day infections over the last 24 hours with 360,960 cases.
These are the other big stories tonight. Metro Manila mayors are pushing for a hybrid MECQ. In their recommendation, border controls are still in place, but more businesses will be allowed to open. The Defense Department is pushing back against China's call to stop maritime drills in the South China Sea. The country asserts its sovereignty over the territorial waters. And fully vaccinated Americans can finally ditch their face masks outdoors. Their president even had the first taste of going maskless in Washington. These big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Metro Manila mayors are proposing the implementation of a more flexible version of the modified ECQ as the current status is set to lapse on Friday. What can we expect from this hybrid quarantine classification? Let's find out in Maricel Halili's report.
NCR Plus residents might soon get their much-needed haircut. More businesses will be allowed to reopen in the Metro Manila Council's latest recommendation. They are pushing for a hybrid modified enhanced community quarantine starting May 1.
Siguro po, kamuka, ang malaking sector po kasamang sito will be yung mga barbero, yung mga nagugupit. Sabi nga ng Secretary Mon, why not kung open air naman, di ba? Yung mga ganun pag-uusap. So, all of these activities will be listed, keeping in mind na yung nga, dapat magkaroon ng maraming trabaho ngayon talaga.
What makes this new quarantine status a hybrid? On One News agenda, MMDA Chair Benher Abalos said there will still be strict borders, but more establishments will resume activity.
May mga takot kasi ang mga dalubhasa na luluwagan mo dadami raw infeksyon. No? We must preserve whatever gains we have right now. Other side, ang dami namang walang trabaho at nagugutom naman. Sabi ng mga economists, nararamdaman din naman natin. So what the mayor chose was the middle ground.
If the president approves, the Trade Department will issue a list of business allowed under the hybrid MECQ. The council also recommended curfew changes. From the current 8 p.m. to 5 a.m., they want it shortened to 10 p.m. to 4 a.m.
Before 8, nagsasara na po yung mga establishments. Pagka ginawa nating 10 p.m. yan, kahit pa paano madadagdag sila ng 2 hours at dagdag din na customers nila yan.
While not objecting to the proposal, Okta Research stressed that minimum health standards should still be strictly imposed.
Hindi pwede mag-transition sa GCQ as we speak kasi it will, yung trend po natin pwede mag-reverse. Pag nag-reverse yan, madaling magkaroon ng sitwasyon kagaya ng India po dito sa Metro Manila na talagang grabe ang pagkalat.
Okta noted the positive effect of the strict lockdown in bringing down cases. From the daily infection average of 5,500 in NCR weeks ago, cases are now down to 3,500 a day. But for Professor Guido David, an MECQ extension is needed as hospital occupancy in Metro Manila is still at critical level.
They will still remain to be full. Mas maraming magpapa-admit as long as we're having more than 2,800 cases per day. So hopefully, in 1 to 2 weeks, mabababa natin yung number of cases per day natin sa NCR to mga less than 2,800. And by that, magsisimula na magkaroon ng easing sa hospital capacity natin.
President Duterte is expected to announce the new community quarantine classification for NCR Plus this evening. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
Some Metro Manila hospitals have to increase their COVID bed capacity by pulling out beds intended for non-COVID cases. This has disrupted hospital operations and work assignments. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro will give us a front seat to the story.
To solve the shortage of beds, the health department ordered hospitals to increase the percentage of beds allotted for COVID patients. But that may have bred other problems.
We don't just cater kasi to COVID patients. No? We do have other patients as well.
The Department of Health required all public hospitals to increase COVID capacity from 30% to 50%. For private hospitals, COVID bed allotment went up from 20% to 30%. The decision improved the numbers, but it also caught hospital administrators by surprise. In simple terms, the number of actual hospital beds has not really increased, only the number of beds devoted to COVID-19.
Hindi naman kami pwedeng basta-basta nag-increase. So where we do get that? You pull them out from the regular patients. Yun yung nagiging dilemma. No, sa not only in the hospital na Maynila but for the other hospitals as well.
Hindi natin pwedeng kalimutan yung mga non-COVID cases natin because nandiyan sila, may sakit talaga sila and they have to be attended as well.
More importantly, this also increases the need for more healthcare workers. In Ospital ng Maynila, non-COVID surgeries have been scaled down. Elective surgeries such as gallbladder, prostate, mastectomies, and the like are postponed indefinitely, though emergency elective cases such as cancer surgeries, labor, and trauma are still performed. They even use their surgery ward as a COVID ward.
Yung mga elective cases na pwede mong i-postpone, pinopostpone na namin. Kasi nga, we had to pull out staffing from the OR in order to cope with the needs of the COVID wards.
Ospital ng Maynila needs at least 100 additional healthcare workers to meet the new demand. Ideally, one nurse should cater to 2 patients. But with a lack of manpower in Ospital ng Maynila, one nurse is in charge of at least 8 patients. DOH has pulled 200 nurses from outlying provinces to help the Greater Manila area, but Hospital ng Maynila has not received any of them, while the Philippine Heart Center has received a few, but the numbers are far from enough.
Remember, mas malaki yung population ng non-COVID that has to be attended compared to the COVID.
Dr. Limpen says there are a lot more non-COVID patients than COVID patients, and hospitals need to take care of people, whether they have COVID or not. I'm Jacob Lazaro and we are One News.
Almost 2 months into the country's inoculation drive, some 240,000 Filipinos have been fully vaccinated. More than 1.8 million doses have been administered, the majority of which were used as first dose. Average vaccination per day stands at more than 35,300. The country has already received 3.5 million doses. The majority of that were distributed to some 3,400 vaccination sites. Around 5,000 doses will be allocated for the symbolic inoculation of minimum wage earners and OFWs on Labor Day.
Time for next week's look at some of the day's big stories. The expected arrival tonight of 15,000 Sputnik V vaccines has been postponed. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr. says the delay is due to logistical challenges on the shipment. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque assures that initial doses of the Russian-made vaccines will arrive by May. The owner of MV Sarangani may face charges after samples of the liquid it was emitting at Manila Bay tested positive for oil, grease, and fecal coliform. DENR says they will be issuing a notice of violation. DOJ is also expected to file charges in the coming weeks. And as the country celebrates the 500th year since the Battle of Mactan, a senator revives a false theory on the Philippines' first hero, Lapu-Lapu. President Duterte's former longtime aide, Senator Bongo, said in a speech that Lapu-Lapu is a tausog and may actually be from Mindanao. The speech drew flack from historians and Cebuanos. Some even urged the Lapu-Lapu city government to declare Go as persona non grata. For the big story in sports, IBF Junior Bantamweight champion Jerwin Ancajas was given a hero's welcome after his successful title defense last April 11. The Games and Amusement Board honored Ancajas after beating Mexican boxer Jonathan Rodriguez via unanimous decision. Despite being the clear favorite, Ancajas stayed composed en route to a successful 9th title defense. GAB Chairman Baham Mitra praised Ancajas, saying that young boxers should try and emulate his mentality.
We think that the young boxers should, idolize. Sana yung mga boksingerong marami ganyan. Simple lang, trabaho lang, quiet lang, pero pagdating sa laban, laban talaga. Disiplinado Parang national treasure ka na ng Pilipinas.
Time for another quick break. When we return, Philippine maritime exercises will continue on in the South China Sea as the Defense Department rejects China's call to stop the drills. And get ready for another Sana All moment. The U.S. is allowing fully vaccinated Americans to go unmasked in public. The details after the break.
Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. You're still watching The Big Story. Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana has flatly rejected calls made by the Chinese Foreign Ministry to stop maritime drills over the West Philippine Sea. Lorenzana asserts Philippine sovereignty over two disputed islands based on the 1982 UNCLOS and the 2016 Hague ruling. But is it wise to continue our maritime activities despite warnings from the Chinese government? To enlighten us on this matter, we have Manny Mogato, One News Defense Editor. Manny, malinaw naman ang
Good evening, Robbie.
Manny, malinaw naman ang pinapahiwatig ng Pilipinas dito, but how confident is everybody and how confident are you that our exercises will not in fact escalate tensions in the West Philippine Sea?
It will not, Robbie, because that is the right approach, the right response to China's lingering presence in the South China Sea. If they are using militia vessels, fishing vessels, and the Coast Guard to assert their claim on the South China Sea, we should also do that. And the right equipment, the right response is through the Coast Guard to assert our maritime laws, our environmental laws, because they are destroying the fisheries resources in that area.
Okay, so going back to that strategy, kung tamang-tama lang yung strategy na yon, is there room to even ramp up the strategy?
Yes, Robbie, because we saw that China has been using fishermen as a militia to control the South China Sea. The Philippines is now doing that by sending fishermen and our Coast Guard, our civilian personnel of the BIFAR and the police to also claim our sovereignty and sovereign rights in those seas.
Okay, maraming salamat. That was Manny Mogato, One News Defense Editor.
Let's take a look at the biggest stories on print and online. From the Philippine Star, a supposed PCOO memorandum instructs state media to show that the Philippines is doing better in managing the pandemic than other countries by reporting global tallies daily. PCOO stands by the memo, saying it only amplifies the facts. WHO data shows that the Philippines has the 26th most number of COVID-19 infections globally. In Southeast Asia, the Philippines ranks second to Indonesia. From Business World, Fitch Ratings slashes its economic growth projection for the Philippines this year as the country struggles to contain COVID-19. It now expects GDP to come in at 6.3%, slower than the previous 6.9% forecast. The new projection is below government target. And this from News 5, the Estrella Pantaleon Bridge is nearing completion. DPWH says the bridge is now 89% complete and is expected to decongest the notorious EDSA traffic. It can accommodate 50,000 vehicles, significantly higher than the previous 2,000. The bridge that connects Makati and Mandaluyong is set to open by January next year.
And here are the other big stories from around the world. U.S. President Joe Biden has announced that fully vaccinated Americans can now go maskless in outdoor activities like walking or hiking. But face coverings are still required in crowded settings like concerts. The updated health advice comes just as more than half of all adults in the U.S. have received at least a single dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Biden described the progress of vaccination in the U.S. as stunning. But over in Thailand, where masks are still compulsory, their prime minister has been fined for going maskless. Thai leader Prayut Chan-o-cha was fined 6,000 baht or roughly 9,200 pesos for not wearing a mask during a meeting with the governor of Bangkok. In Bangkok, the fine for incorrect wearing of masks can reach 20,000 baht or 30,000 pesos. Thailand is now experiencing an outbreak in COVID cases.
Another big story in sports. Gilas Pilipinas 3-on-3 has been given clearance to begin training for the FIB Olympic qualifying tournament. The SBP made the announcement after PBA gave the go signal for its players. This includes Joshua Munzon, Alvin Pasaol, Leonard Santillan, Mo Tautua, and CJ Perez. The squad will train at the Inspire Sports Academy under a bubble setup starting next week. The FIBA 3-on-3 Olympic qualifier is set from May 26 to 30 in Graz, Austria. And the tryouts for the women's volleyball team inside the Subic Gymnasium bubble began today with 16 players in attendance. A mix of veterans and promising collegiate players answered the call of the Philippine National Volleyball Federation as it looks to build a team for the upcoming Southeast Asian Games. 24 out of the 40 invited players, however, were not able to attend the tryouts. Strict protocols were followed throughout the proceedings, with participants immediately returning to Manila upon conclusion of the one-day tryout.
Pop star Britney Spears will finally address the court on June 23 for her long-standing conservatorship battle. Britney supporters went all out. A fan even had her hair shaved, an homage to the singer who did the same in 2007 during a breakdown. Britney has been under conservatorship since 2008, which resulted in hospitalization and rehab. For over 12 years, her father, a legal appointee, has taken control of her personal and financial affairs. But the 39-year-old has long expressed disagreement over her father's control. Britney's case has had a heightened scrutiny following the release of her documentary last February. Lots of fans also sparked the hashtag Free Britney movement. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
Time and again, Filipinos have shown that their talents are world-class. In Cebu, young beatboxing twins have caught the attention of actor Will Smith. On Instagram, Will shared the spectacular video of Jomar and Jake Canencia covering Martin Garrix's Animals. And as they say in Filipino, placado. It now has more than 8 million views. Several personalities were also amazed. Even Martin himself was impressed and simply laughed in awe. Jomar and Jake went live on YouTube earlier, thanking their supporters. The twins said they will release more beatbox covers soon.
I think that's the beauty of... hindi ko kaya gawin yun. Huwag mo ko hahamunin. That's the beauty of social media. I mean, it's easier to get discovered around the world.
Oo nga. But part of social media, kagaya ng sabi mo kanina, sana all, di ba? Yung balita sa United States, pwede nang hindi mag-mask. Yung mga, basta bakunado na.
Oo. Part nun na mabilis din mainggit.
Oo.
Sa iba.
Oh, yeah, but that's a real thing. The other day, Father Nick Astriaco of Octa Research was saying we had vaccine hesitancy before. Now they're noting vaccine envy. And that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. That's a positive effect of social media and information online.
Mm.
Well, I'm
Sana
inviting
all.
everybody. If you want good information, listen to Robbie's podcast.
Ayan, maraming
Teka,
salamat.
diba? Since we're talking about social media.
Maraming salamat.
Well, that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
At ako naman si Gretchen Ho. We are One News. Have a good evening.